Hi everyone, welcome to North and South Pods. This is Tim speaking. This is a politics, community, local politics podcast. Today I'm speaking to three people who are going to introduce themselves and talk about their campaign. It's all to do with children's services in Sefton, and they're going to tell us what they're doing. I'm going to speak to you about the national picture in relation to children's services and then the local picture in terms of Sefton Metropolitan Borough Council, which is just north of the Liverpool area, to people who are a bit further afield. So, Michelle, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Hello, my name's Michelle. I'm an adoptive mum of three. My children have some health disability issues. Two of them have got FASD, which is fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and I've been campaigning to get awareness and training for staff and parents. So that's my beef at the moment.
And Julie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Julie. I'm mum to three lovely boys. They do have additional needs, been out of school for a considerable length of time. So, along with Michelle, we're co-chairs of the Voice of the Family, and we've also called ourselves Children Failed by Sefton MBC just to help people find us a little better.
Yeah, and we'll share your details on Facebook as well, or we'll share your details in the podcast notes.
Thank you.
Okay, and Nikki, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Nikki. I am a care leaver, parent of four neurodivergent children. I'm neurodivergent myself, and I'm also a grandma of two who are now on the ASD pathway. And my eldest granddaughter is 4, and she is currently experiencing difficulties in education.
Thank you very much. Now, I've done lots of podcasts in the past about neurodiversity. I'm someone who left teaching last year. I think after 25 years in secondary schools, seeing the impact of the cuts over the last decade, etc., I did feel quite disillusioned with what I thought children were getting on the front line in schools. And we'll talk about other issues as well beyond that. But neurodiversity, I've spoken to quite a few people who've got experience in neurodiversity. And do you reckon that possibly up to 40% of people may be, to some extent, neurodiverse, but the actual diagnosis, you can be sub-diagnosis and never really diagnosed with these things. But that's another story entirely. And this filters into local politics and things like that as well. So do you want to tell us when the group was set up and what's the official role of the group?
It was a WhatsApp group, really, that started off with 3 people. It was me, Nikki, and there was another member. And to be honest, it really started off as that. And then we grew and grew and grew. Julie joined us. Julie had the fantastic idea of let's do a Facebook page. And then she came up with the idea of Children Failed by Sefton, and I was, but when she did it and we opened last May on Facebook, and within the first 4 days, we had 100 people asking to join. We've now got 488 members. We can't all be wrong. They are parents. They are, we do have only a couple of specialists who are on there who give their expertise and their guidance in some areas, but I would say 486 members are parents. We give support, we help, we guide. We can't really we point people in the right direction. We try. We're parents ourselves. We're time short. All we go on. We've got a wealth of experience between all of us, and everybody in the group chips in. And we've got some people. We have a committee. We've got a constitution.
Right.
We became a committee. We've got a treasurer, secretary, chairs. We have a committee, and we're trying to do fundraising. We want to get charity status. To be honest, it's grown so fast and so big that we started off, and then we started to think, what can we do? Where are we going to go? So we started to go, and we made appointments to see all the MPs in the area. Damien Moore was good, actually. He got us an appointment to see the children's minister, which didn't actually come off because the general election got in the way. But I suppose we can talk about that and the steps that we've done. We've got a list of things that we have achieved this year, And then we've got a list of things that we want to achieve. So Julie and Nick can go into that. But to be honest, it was something that we didn't know we needed, but people have told us and have come on and said that, you know, they just didn't know where to go, where to turn. They thought that they were the only ones. And, you know, we've said categorically, you are not the only people who are feeling this, who are, you know, we've got people who've had children removed. We've gone from that extreme to the other extreme of, you know, their child hasn't had an EHCP. They've been waiting for it for nearly a year. Their children, as Julie, their children have been out of school for years. We've got such extremes, and you've got vulnerable children in the mix. People are just tearing their hair out. They don't know what to do and where to turn.
As a teacher as well, I think since COVID, I think that people have struggled more so since COVID. I think everyone, including adults. And I think from what I've seen in schools, a lot of children seem to be struggling more since COVID as well.
Teachers also, they don't have a lot of SEND training. From what I've heard at like teacher training colleges, you know, one of our latest, you know, we've been asking for FASD training. We have a member who is in the union. He's actually arranged through the union. The teachers union is going to pay for all the teachers in Sefton to have FASD training.
Good. Can I just say as well, just very quickly, Damien Moore is the former Conservative MP for Southport, who you mentioned earlier. David, who's a good friend of mine, who's been on a few podcasts already, and I know he's part of the group, and he speaks very well. So sorry, continue.
So in answer to your question, that's how we got started. And it's like it's a group that we didn't know we needed, but now it's like something that we couldn't do without, because, you know, we've done so much, you know, I started going to, there's an overview and scrutiny committee for children's services. I started going 2 years ago, and I sat in at these meetings thinking, nobody knows what they're doing. You get local councillors who are sitting there who've got absolutely no idea what's going on. You've got no idea how to scrutinise children's services. And through that, I met another member of our group who is a doctor, and he's a lecturer. He does data analysis. He's fantastic. He's become a really valued member of the team. And, you know, he attends these meetings and he sits there and he's like, all these numbers are fudged. You know, this is crazy. Where are these numbers coming from? And, you know, he sat at these meetings, not because he had a child who had a diverse need, but because as a taxpayer and as a person who's got feelings, he went to these meetings of his own accord to sit there to listen to what was going on, and was so appalled that he just carried on going. It's people like that care, and yet, you know, you have these councillors who sat in these meetings. You know, I'm not sure if you saw I think there was a video on YouTube that somebody made about, I mean, the councillor, she's passed now, but, you know, saying, you know, that it was a disco. What is this improvement service? She sat on the scrutiny committee and had no idea what the improvement committee was about. I mean, that just beggars belief.
Yeah, it really does. And I've got a bit of a track record with the union that you mentioned earlier as well. When you come up against big organisations that often lack transparency, when you get like a local news desert where there's no local newspapers, etc., you often feel so alone and isolated. And then when you speak to other people, you go, wait there, this is happening around. And you kind of get gaslighted and isolated. We have this all the time with the post office scandal recently, and we just see it all the time. And before I bring Julie and Nikki on to continue, I just think it's great that you've got this group going. Now, in terms of the national picture, obviously, you know, you're getting people together who've got concerns and similar experiences, and it's kind of like just developed from there. And across England, there was an article in the Guardian on the 23rd of November, and I saw this because I knew this meeting was coming up, and he said that England's SEM provision is failing, that the local government ombudsman is very concerned with the provision of child services, that 90% of complaints are upheld. So what seems to be happening is they're just like doing things at the stroke of a pen for whatever reason, and then when certain people do stand up, and you can feel very isolated and alone, 90% of complaints are upheld. In many areas, this is the national picture, first of all, there's no support and a lack of staff. Academies and free schools are often exempted from the ombudsman. So it's often only state schools which, can be held to account. You can only complain about an EHCP, which is Education and Healthcare Plan, people with what you might call more extreme needs or more developed needs or additional needs, as we now say.
Or a need, yeah.
A need, yeah, because everyone's got needs. Apparently, councils can't process things quickly. The EHCPs aren't implemented due to funding, due to lack of facilities, lack of training for staff. I mean, I remember like teaching SEN groups, and you'd often have 15, 20, 25 in, and he'd give you a piece of paper saying, "Is what this child's needs are. This is in a mainstream school." And you're like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, it's very unfair, I think, the educational system on people with additional needs.
You've got two issues here. You've got children's services, which is split into two groups.
Yeah.
So you've got children's services, you've got social care,
yeah.
and then you've got education, which are two.
Yeah.
Well, they're not two completely different things because they do overlap. We've got something to say about that as well. Julie's got something to say about the commissioner and about the different reports that were commissioned. But also, what I wanted to say to you was about the national picture. I attended a conference in July with Professor Luke Clements he lectures at Leeds Law University. It was a conference and it was called Systems Generated Trauma. And it was for parents who experience trauma generated by the system, the social care system. It was packed. And if you Google him and have a look at some of his reports that he's written, there's a fantastic one about parent blame. He writes some amazing stuff, and he's totally, I put him in touch with Damien Moore at the time, and he's just a fantastic advocate for parents. It's not just here. Sefton is particularly bad.
Yeah.
It is a national thing, but because we live here and we see it and we deal with it, and I think also they don't like us talking, so that we know it's not just us. We know it's happening to a lot of people. The same issues are happening to different people. That shouldn't be. Bad practice should not be happening in Sefton. That we've had this improvement plan now for a long time.
Yeah.
We've been telling poor boys that it is not improving, and that it's still bad practice.
Yeah.
And I'm going to shut up now, but
that's fine.
I just wanted to say to you that I attended that conference and an FASD conference in Edinburgh recently. Julie, we've got to tell you about the Paul Moffat's report, because he was the first commissioner that came out, and we found his report and Paul Boyce, who's submitted, I think, 2 reports, and the latest report was submitted on the 28th of November to the director, to the council. Nobody's heard what's in it, so we're just waiting with bated breath to find out
what that's about.
What it's about.
If we can just lead into that, and then I'll bring Julie in.
Yeah.
There are apparently 576,000 young people on the HCPs nationally. Now, The Guardian said that children are being let down, that the whole system is just completely unsustainable nationally. I also read recently about young people who have got needs and are looked after just being labelled as homeless by the council, because then they have to do less work and take less responsibility for them. Now, councils have had 40 to 60% cuts since 2010. That's another story. But you've got people just being moved around like pawns on a chessboard. The national picture is one thing. In Sefton, it's leadership issues and lack of ability to change things, lack of communication between the Lado and different parts of the system. So we've known about this for a while, but it seems like no one seems to be able to get a handle on it. So, Julia, do you want to come in with the current situation with Sefton?
Yeah. So the voice of the families is essential in Sefton, especially in light of the persistent challenges highlighted by Ofsted's evaluation of the local authority's children's services. In May 2022, Ofsted rated Sefton's children's services as inadequate, citing serious and widespread failures in core areas of social work practice, including assessment, planning, and management oversight. This assessment was not an isolated incident. Previous inspections had already identified significant weaknesses. For instance, a focused visit in March 2021 noted serious concerns in child protection practice and management oversight, resulting in areas for priority action. In response to these ongoing issues, the Department of Education appointed a commissioner to oversee improvements in Sefton's children's services. So that first commissioner was Paul Moffat. So in response to these ongoing issues, the Department for Education appointed a commissioner to oversee improvements in Sefton's children's services. The commissioner's report, published in October 2022, emphasised the need for urgent and sustained action to address the systemic failures and to ensure that children receive the protection and support they require. Despite these interventions, progress has been slow. A BBC report from July 24, so only recently, described Ofsted's finding as sobering, noting that children remain at risk due to delays in implementing child protection protocols and weakness in leadership, which comes up again. In this context, Voice of the Families serves as a crucial advocate for children and families in Sefton. By amplifying the experience and concerns of those directly affected, the group plays a vital role in holding authorities accountable and pushing for the systemic change necessary to ensure the safety and well-being of all children in the community. The persistent inadequacies highlighted by Ofsted underscore the importance of grassroots organisations like Voice of the Families in driving meaningful and lasting improvements in children's services. From what I can gather, Paul Moffat produced his report, and the way we understood it, he didn't see the issue as SEN, as opposed to it was protection and safeguarding. So as a result, they haven't really looked at the actual whole children's services as a holistic being, which is what I think they need to do. I think if they looked at education, at early help, at what we can do in the community as far as what's available for the kids outside of school, what's this, what's that, but they're not. Everything just seems so in boxes, and yet tick box, we've done that, tick box, we've done that, but actually we've still got children out of school, we've got children still taken into care where is it necessary? Are they necessary to still be in care? There's just so much, there's so many branches to it all.
So I think the situation, it's obviously very, very complicated in terms of how the system interacts, but there's so many key parts of the system which just aren't working. And I think that's why it's a big issue in Sefton. The leadership in particular is being flagged up. So Nikki, who have you met with as part of your campaign?
So this year we broadened our network and we've strengthened our advocacy by meeting with several different organisations and individuals. So we've met with Sefton Carers, we've met with Sefton Health Watch, and we've met several times with reporters from the Liverpool Echo. We've also met with the BBC. We've met with Damien Moore, which we've already mentioned. We've met with Patrick Hurley when he took over Sefton, Southport, and we've met with Peter Dowd. We've met with Commissioner Paul Boyce on several occasions.
Bill Esterson,
Yeah.
He wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
We're still chasing with Bill Esterton now.
Yeah, so Damien Moore lost the seat at the last election, but you've got 3 Labour MPs covering North, Central and South Sefton, Bootle Avenue, who you've just mentioned.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, since Damien Moore lost his seat. So Damien Moore, he actually arranged for us to go and see the Children's Minister on 2 occasions. But unfortunately, it was postponed. So since July, since Patrick Hurley's taken the seat from Damien Moore and the change in the areas, we've actually been chasing Bill Esterson since July and asking him to take it forward and get the new meeting with the Children's Minister. And we've been met with just blocks or total ignorance. There's not even responses coming back to us anymore. So we're really, really struggling we've got a Labour council and a Labour government, but again, those two are disjointed.
I think that the other big thing is, and I've covered this on other podcasts, is a lot of the Labour councillors certainly in Southern Sefton, they're kind of in very, very, very safe seats. And
Yes.
although the new Labour government nationally might be saying they've got a lot on the plate, etc., and they want to like change this and change that and improve funding here and there, the fact of the matter is you've got people at risk of significant harm ongoing, and you're coming up against all these bureaucratic obstacles which are stopping you from getting your points across. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a very fair assessment.
Mm.
Even trying to access the scrutiny committee.
Mm.
So they have a children's scrutiny committee, and we've asked for a seat on it. You know, as a fully constitutional group, we've asked, can we have a seat on that? Because we've got a lot of life experience between the group, and we could really help scrutinise, you know, things that are coming through.
Yeah.
And we've been told no so many times. So they do have 2 parent representatives, but to become a parent representative, there's the bureaucracy. You've got to already be a governor in a primary or secondary school in Sefton, and then be nominated and then be accepted on. So one of the 2 parent governors, I don't think she's attended for at least a year.
No, they haven't.
The other parent governor, I'm not naming names, and I'm not obviously going to comment about their personalities or anything else.
Yeah.
It's not personal, but she doesn't speak. She never speaks. So we're taking it upon ourselves to go to these meetings and ask these questions. And we think, well, why won't they just let somebody with real life lived experience sit there and obviously help them? It's not about us and them. We're trying to create this collaboration. But it's just constant red tape and no and no and no. It's like the live streaming. We've really fought for that as a group. And it's again, we were promised it for January this year. And the last meeting I went to just before Christmas, they said, we still have, it's in place, but we still have to figure out how to use it. So unfortunately, it won't be ready for the next meeting in January.
I mean,
And
I dealt with, I don't want to go into too much detail about other hats I've worn in the past, but this is just so typical of what normal members of the public are coming up against. And it's
Yeah.
absolutely dreadful. And the thing with the Sefton situation with children's services is the media nationally and locally are onto it, how bad the situation is. And yet
Yeah.
you're still facing these obstacles, even when it's considered to be much, much worse than other authorities. I mean, it's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, it is.
Nick, is there anything else you want to answer for question 4 in terms of what else have you done? Because you were talking about people who you'd met.
No, so the other things that we've done, I think Julie just touched upon it then. We've actively campaigned on multiple issues. We've submitted 6 petitions to Sefton Council, the scrutiny committee. We have, as Julie said, we've asked for more lived experience on the scrutiny committee. Now we've got parent carers here in our group. We've got care leaver parents such as myself. Nobody on that committee is representing people like me. You know, there's so much that of value in our group that they could have, but instead you have to jump through all the hoops. So we've asked for council meetings to be televised, which they've said that they will do it. We're highlighting and have highlighted the unfit complaints process, which led to a subcommittee where we've gone through the complaints process, and they're saying, "No, we're going to change it." We've campaigned for improved post-16 provision because there's nothing for our children in Sefton. As soon as they reach 16, it's like a cliff. You've got the care cliff, now you've got the education cliff. But a lot of our children haven't had the education. And, you know, just to touch base on the fact that the commissioner and everyone's focusing on, you know, the care of children and the vulnerabilities and social care, but then you've also got the educational neglect. If a parent was keeping their child out of education, that parent would be hauled into court for educational neglect. Yet they are neglecting our children's educations, and nobody seems to be really interested in that. Our campaigning has led to the approval and creation of the parents subcommittee, which I've just mentioned.
Yeah.
We've got further subcommittee meetings coming up as well. So we are really, really trying to campaign, and we're trying to get everybody together. We're trying to show what is happening to our families and our children who are losing their childhoods, and it's just not acceptable.
I think that's the commissioner that forced that, though, wasn't it? To get a petition and to ask any questions on that scrutiny committee, we had to submit a petition with 25 Sefton signatures. The chair of the scrutiny committee set a timer for 5 minutes where you were allowed to speak, and as soon as the timer went off, you had to finish speaking. It was just ridiculous. But I don't know whether it was the commissioner or somebody had a hand, and then they formed a subcommittee. And so over the last 18 months, they've come up with, and we've had 2 subcommittee meetings. We were supposed to have 4 last year, I think, weren't we, Nick? But we had 2. So we highlighted the complaints process because we said that parents were being targeted if they made a complaint. There's a new complaints manager at Sefton, and we now have his name, and you can email him directly. I don't know if he's actually done anything, but it's supposed to have been overhauled, the complaints process.
As well as that, there's been concerns and there's been allegations made towards the group that it's a political group for having the audacity to raise issues and to peacefully protest. Hello, democracy. And also, a lot of people are a little bit concerned that if they complain too much and raise concerns, that there might be some pushback against that. And I can understand those fears. Moving on to our last 2 questions, that one of the big issues about the group is you must feel sometimes that like you're banging a head against a brick wall. But Julie, maybe you can answer this one. How do you feel that the group could improve Sefton's children's services?
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Voice of the Families, so our group, could play and can play and will play a transformative role in improving Sefton's children's services. And we'll do that by advocating for systemic change that places children and families at the centre of decision making. One of the key areas we believe needs urgent attention is the remit of the Commissioner, which is Paul Boyce. Currently, the Commissioner's role is focused on specific aspects of children's services, but we strongly feel that this should be extended to the entire service to ensure a holistic approach. This is critical because the challenges within children's services are interconnected. For example, issues in safeguarding can often overlap with problems in education and support for families with additional needs. And without coordinating a whole service strategy, these gaps will always persist. A commissioner with a broader remit could help identify and address these systemic failures more effectively, ensuring that all aspects of children's services are working together to meet the needs of the children and the families. Voice of the Families also have a unique role in this process. We bring together over 500 families with real lived experiences of these failings, and by sharing these stories collectively, we provide vital insight into where the system is breaking down and what needs to change. For instance, families in our group have highlighted the lack of communication between services, delays in access and critical support, and inconsistencies in safeguarding practices. We believe that the Commissioner, working holistically across the entire service, could collaborate with groups like ours, which there are others, to address these issues at their root. Together, we can drive real change, ensuring that policies are not only designed to meet inspection standards, but also deliver the practical support children and families need in their daily lives. Ultimately, our vision is for a Sefton where children's services operate as a cohesive, accountable system that listens to families, acts on their concerns, and prioritises the well-being of every child. So that, in a nutshell, is how we feel we could improve Sefton's children's services, and we would love to be involved in that. That's giving up our time, our energy, and you're using our experience, our lived experience, which is just, I don't think you can put a price on it. I really don't.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that what you said tallies with the Ofsted monitoring reports and the Ofsteds and the criticisms that have been levelled of leadership issues, safeguarding, different departments not communicating with each other. if the commissioner was in charge holistically of everything and take a wider look at things and listen to people who are being affected on the ground, that's what democracy and transparency is meant to be all about. And your demands are certainly not unreasonable, and they're certainly not political. It's about basic service provision and giving people what they need, vulnerable people. So I think that's a very good summary. In terms
and I think transparency, sorry to interrupt you, Tim, but while we're on to transparency, that's something we've always struggled to try and achieve within the group. We can put in freedom of information requests around things that we're struggling with. Like, for example, did you know that every family is allowed to ask for a carer's assessment if they care for a child? So that's separate to child in need or safeguarding. It's a carer's assessment. And it's actually in Sefton, it's the carers centre in Waterloo that carry out, they're like commissioned to carry those out. I did a freedom of information request. Do you know how many they carried out in a year?
What?
4. Yeah. So if that gives you some kind of understanding of where carers and parents and families are at, as far as kind of getting the support they need to look after these children with complex needs, and they're just not doing the basics to see to the community as a whole. So I just feel like, it's not the best it could be. It's not functioning the best it could be.
Absolutely. Michelle, do you want to look at plans for the future for the group?
We're just going to carry on more of the same, knocking on doors, asking for support. We'd like to find out what's in the Commissioner's report that was out on the 28th of November, that's with the council now. We thought it would go to the council meeting in November, the full council meeting, but it didn't. So I think there's a full council meeting in January. But the thing is, will it be released to the public? Because the last one wasn't. We don't know.
But it sounds like you've got visions as well to become a charity. You're already constituted treasurers, etc. So you become more organised. You started out as a group just where people come together and go, wait there, this happened to me as well. And we've seen this so many times, but the issue in Sefton is there's acute problems and we need them dealt with and we need them acknowledged and put out into the open. And we need people to be listened to and to be considered, and we need transparency.
Who knows the children best? It's the parents, but the parents aren't listened to. We need accountability and transparency, and to work together. I think that's all we really want, is to just work together.
Yeah.
And that's all we've ever asked, really. We don't want to. I don't think it's too much to ask.
Well, amen to that. I think that's a great way to say you're reaching out and saying, listen, let's work together. It's not like you're saying, we want you gone, or you're not. Let's work together and make the situation better. That's in everyone's interest, isn't it? Just before we conclude, and I want to just thank you all for giving up your evening, because it's New Year's Eve. It's a Monday evening, and I know people have got busy lives to lead, and you've got lots of responsibilities. But is there anything else which you want to add, which we haven't covered from anyone? I want to give you a chance to raise your points now.
I think we'd like to meet somebody in government. We'd like to go higher. We'd like to go down to London and meet the Children's Minister. We'd like to meet Wes Streeting, talk about social care. We just want to go as high as we can and speak to the people who are actually in charge.
Yeah, I think because there's so much diversity as well, Tim, in our group, everyone's coming at it from different angles. My bugbear is children out of education just being totally left, even despite having EHCPs. Like, my child hasn't put pen to paper for 5 years because he's just been totally failed by them. And you try and bring this up, and you try to so now part of what I'm trying to roll out for the group is kind of the bridge for the children in between them being left at home with nothing and being out socialising and being able to engage in activities, because there's nothing. It doesn't come under the remit of CAMS. It doesn't come under the remit of anyone. One other thing I wanted to say, was what's happening in Sefton at the moment is they'll do like a child in need assessment when you say, you know, my child's got extra needs, they've got SEN and whatever. So they do a SEN assessment and they'll place you on a child in need plan, because that's the only way that they can get support to you, you know, to give you the respite and the child some support at home. And then what they're doing, they'll ask parents if they got anyone who can be paid minimum wage to actually, you know, cover the hours that they deem you need respite. So it might be like 10 hours a week. Do you know anyone who will look after your child on minimum wage, this SEN child, for 10 hours a week? And most of the time people don't, otherwise they'd have asked them already and most probably done it for free. So what they then do is pay extortionate amounts to these social care agencies, and they're sending in staff, and oh my goodness, they're not trained. The amount they pay is astronomical. At one session we had, I got left with one of the carers brought their son along, and then two of the carers, because one of them couldn't drive, took one of my children out, one of my three boys out, and left me at home with two of my children and their son during my respite. So it's kind of things like that are happening and going under the radar. But once they've ticked a box and said, oh yeah, they're with such care agency, it's kind of all sense goes out the window and nobody's following it up. Same with alternative provision. And then we've got aim and high, which I could go into, which, you know, it doesn't fit the needs of so many children, but they're still using it. And when you say, you know, my children won't attend these sessions, they've got severe anxiety, they've got this, they've got that, they say, oh, well, you need direct payments. And that's when we start the rigmarole of you basically ending up with people who leave you with their child while they take yours out. And that is the just system of SEN at the moment. It's just you're going round in rings trying to get support to the point that you say, forget it. I know what I'm dealing with. I'll just leave it. That'll be my life.
It seems like that's ultimately what they want people to do, to just give up, put up with it,
Yeah.
give up and get on with it. And it's a terrible thing because, as you say, you just feel completely gaslighted, don't you? And let down. And then the people who they're letting down as well are the young people who are vulnerable. You know,
exactly.
They're powerless.
That's what it's there for.
Yeah. Nikki, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to raise the, you know, mental health of our children who are being failed. I've got 4 children. 2 of them are adults now, but the education system, the lack of support, the lack of understanding that they've all experienced has left them with such poor mental health. And that is lifelong. That mental health, that failure is going to live with them forever.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that their needs were not met in education, the fact that they were isolated, the fact that they had all these difficulties with friendships, and just going to school for them was torturous. They couldn't manage it. And then it's internal to them as a failure to them. At the start of this, I mentioned to you that I was a care leaver and I'm a parent. My parenting has been called into question because of my children's disabilities, because they have poor mental health. It's all been blamed onto me. And I know I've spoken to so many other parents that have also received the same parenting blame, you know. And this constant fight that we've got, we're fighting for our children, we're fighting for their education, we're fighting for people to see them, because that's what we want. We want people to see our children, to see how much they can actually offer, to see their value, to see how so special that they are. But nobody sees them because they don't fit into a nice, neat box. And then they will become adults, and then they're going to be somebody else's issue, or they're going to be parents with still poor mental health, with still this trauma from childhood where their needs were not met, they weren't identified, and the children that don't fit in those boxes are often blamed for their own behaviours, which again is going to impact their mental health. So when we're looking at the whole holistic view of Sefton children's services, we've got to look at the impact on their mental health by their educational needs not being met, and how that is neglectful of the local authority.
I could talk to you about my experiences in schools over the years, but it's the tip of the iceberg. I think we could talk for many more hours about your experiences, the experiences in Sefton, and how it ties in with so many other things. But I just think it's important that we get this information out there, and people realise that they're not alone, and people realise that they can change things, and not to give up. And I think that I think you deserve a lot of credit for not only setting up the group, but sticking with it and putting your valuable time into this and working with other people to make the situation better moving forward. So keep up the good work. I just think it's great what you're doing, and the sacrifices you're making with your own time and energy, particularly in the light of that kind of bureaucratic gaslighting. Let's be honest, it's very, very difficult when you're putting up with that all of the time. So I think the resilience that you're showing as well is phenomenal.
Thank you.
No worries. Is there anything else anyone wants to add, or before we conclude?
One of our petitions in January is going to be about adoption and failed adoptions and the lack of support. Yeah, one of our petitions is going to go to the scrutiny committee in January. David's going to be putting a few in, and
Good.
Julie's going to put one in.
Michelle, Nikki and Julie, thank you very much for your time and for all your hard work. We'll share details of the Facebook group in the notes and any other information. Anyone out there who needs support in the Sefton area, and in fact beyond, if you're looking for some advice about some of these issues, then you might get some expertise. Well, you will get some expertise on that group. So thank you very much for your time, Nikki, Michelle and Julie, and well done for all the sacrifices, the resilience and the persistence. So it's a very, very important issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.